So, welcome to Matthew Baldwin, Deputy Director at DG Move. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your kind words towards ECF during the event, and also for the, I would dare to say, visionary idea and approach you have to sustainable mobility for the future of what the Commission is going to do in the next years. This new Commission, but with the Parliament and the new Parliament, and so the new formation that is coming.
Let me just on that point. Let me be very clear. I don't think it's a question of my personal, what was the word you used, vision. Mm-hmm. We are now at a very exciting moment. We have a new European Parliament with a strong pro-sustainable mobility committee chair in the form of Karima Delli. We have a new Transport Commissioner coming in who will now be preparing for her hearings. And we have, she has a mission letter from the President of the European Commission calling on her to develop a strategy on smart and sustainable mobility. So it's an opportunity, it's a canvas, if you will, on which the sustainable mobility community, of which the ECF is a very big part, I'm sure will be looking to write and to draw. But I just want to stress, it's not a question of what so much I think as a Commission official, it's what the potential I think we have for really making some big steps forward in sustainable mobility in the years to come.
And also the combination with Frans Timmermans in charge of the climate portfolio.
Sure, no, that's great. It's very exciting as an official to. Yeah, it's always exciting, but you know, there's some very some great visionary potential in what we've heard. I think,
definitely. Okay, so I will just ask you a few questions into how you think or how would you like to see this moving forward. So first of all, we have been asking for a number of years now that the budget allocated to cycling at the Commission is in the European Union is increased. How do you see this? What do you have a figure in mind also that would be a fair distribution of?
Well, I mean, again, I'm not the political decision maker on this. We currently, in the current financial framework, are spending around 2 billion euros on active mobility, walking and cycling, and a lot of that goes on infrastructure, which I personally believe is absolutely crucial. I hear the ECF in its demands to have a big step increase in that, I think to 10% of the total transport budget. I can't put a figure on what I think is reasonable. It's your absolute right to push us to do more. I would draw your attention to the fact that 2 billion euro is already a big increase on what we did in the previous financial framework. Mm-hmm. So things are going very much in the right direction as far as you and indeed I would see it. We're now at the stage when it's for the member states and for the European Parliament to decide, and I don't think I need to invite the ECF to continue to make its views known in a very forceful way. But if I may, one other thing, I do think it's important that the cycling community also works with the pedestrian community, because so often the same money that goes into an infrastructure project can be a benefit to the walking community. And the less sectarian this discussion all is, the more I think the active mobility community will succeed.
Definitely, yeah. And so these last two things that you mentioned are in the direction of one of the initiatives we are about to foster, and that is we are pushing for an intergroup in the Parliament that wants to focus on active and sustainable mobility. It's not simply a cycling group, but we would like to have a strong champions group in the Parliament to represent, as you mentioned, we now need the member states and the Parliament to take their own steps. So are you in favor of this measure? Do you think it will be successful or can be successful? And what kind of benefits do you think it can bring to the trialogue conversation?
Well, this proposal, which I'm learning about really only in the last couple of days, from ECF and I gather some other colleagues, to have an intergroup in the European Parliament to promote active and sustainable mobility is a very interesting one. It's strange in a way that there are currently no transport intergroups at the moment. And so that would already be a big step forward. Neither the ECF nor the European Parliament needs my or the European Commission's permission or approval for any intergroups that they choose to set up. So that's absolutely up to the Parliament finally to decide. But if I may offer as a personal view, please don't forget the word safe in that. So a three-pronged attack, active, sustainable and safe mobility, would also bring in the broader road safety constituencies, which are also not represented in the intergroup, and will make it a very powerful force. Personally speaking, I would find that an incredibly useful grouping of MEPs and a tool to work with in the context of doing what I do, which is promoting road safety and sustainable mobility across the European Union. But as I stress, it's not for me to decide. It would just be a very welcome development.
Definitely. Good to have you on board. Several of the MEPs that we heard during the event in their short introduction to the cycling community in Brussels mentioned tourism, cycling tourism, and the benefits it can bring to Europe, not only in terms of economy, which is one of the aspects we stress a lot upon because it's often forgotten, but about the kind of culture uniformity can bring to Europe, the integration effect that it can have. Do you also think that cycling tourism can be an important tool in the hands of the decision makers towards these objectives?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking me about this very important question about cycle tourism and what the benefits that can bring. I mean, I guess I should declare a personal interest. I am a cycle tourist, like so many other people in this room, and therefore, as a European civil servant, I should be careful about, calling for the development of cycle facilities which I can then use. But I do think you're right in your question, if I may say, to talk about the importance of the economic benefits. Those of us that love cycling as a pleasure and as a wonderful means of getting around the city, we're not going to win the arguments for active mobility, whether it's cycling or walking, simply by saying how nice it is and how much we enjoy it and how good it makes us feel. It was wonderful to hear those personal testimonies from members of the European Parliament, but it's not going to be enough. It's going to have to be based on the solid economic benefits that cycling brings. And the figure I have in the back of my head, and I think it's correct, is 220 billion euros a year is what the cycling brings to the European economy. So it's not a marginal thing, and you need to stress that. I also think we need to stress how to address the problem of the external costs of transport. And again, cycling and active mobility, particularly when they're replacing the use of private internal combustion engine car trips, it's enormous, and it shouldn't be underestimated. So then I come to the point about tourism. Both on road safety and on sustainable mobility, I think we've not done enough on this in the past, and I think it's a very interesting notion. Tourism and road safety is a particularly interesting question, where you have people coming from across Europe not familiar with local cultures, and vice versa. They're at more risk, and they can sometimes bring risk to the communities that they visit. Same on sustainable mobility. The more the tourism is sustainable, the more you can encourage often quite poor communities in the periphery of Europe to develop in a sustainable way. In the ECF, you have the honour and the privilege of running the Eurovela network, which I think is very exciting. You promote the use of bikes and trains, which are a wonderful combination. I myself this summer was able to use a lot of bikes and ferries in the Finnish archipelago and in the Åland Islands, and I really do see the potential. But I guess I should come back right at the end to what I said at the beginning, which is, as someone who uses these facilities, I probably should declare interest and not push them too hard because I get such benefit from them.
Well, it's good to know that, to see that so many people that actually work in this sector are practicing what they preach.
I guess that's true as well.
Yeah.
But so many of us are using multiple forms of transport. I mean, I walk, I cycle, I drive, less and less because I need to less. But, we segregate people and talk about, oh yeah, he's a cyclist, he's a car driver, or, she's a whatever. And we've got to try to, understand the potential for someone, for example, a cyclist, to also go out and sometimes take a car trip when that's the right thing to do.
Definitely, yeah. As always, it's not the use of anything that makes it negative or bad.
Yeah.
It's the abuse
Exactly.
of everything.
And breaking out of the sectarianism, which sometimes happens
definitely.
inside. In
I would close with a more general question. How do you think cycling could benefit European citizens? And that's a very broad one. But what are your three main?
Well, I think the biggest one for me is health, and I mean the health of individuals and the health of cities. We know what the benefits of, in terms of cardiovascular activity, it can bring. We know the growing problem of air quality. I mean, it's a growing problem, and we're learning more about it, and the problem of NOx in particular. There are these figures, and I'm sorry I don't have them to hand, about what benefits if you cycle, you actually are producing a benefit to other people of X euros per trip. So that's the first thing. Health, by far and above, is the important one. The second is congestion. We are struggling a lot. I think I mentioned the figure of 300 billion euros as the cost of congestion in the European Union. When you're cycling, when you're walking, it's an incredibly efficient means of transmitting people across the city. We still see too many single passenger car trips, including right here in Brussels. Looking out now across the Brussels rush hour traffic, that's still too much the norm. And the third thing, this is why I'm not a politician, I can never remember my third point. I think the third point is safety. And here it's a conditional double-edged sword. What we can't afford to do is see a new wave of active mobility choked off by increased fatalities in cities. 70% of the fatalities in European cities are already to walkers and cyclists, 80% in Swedish cities. We've got to bring that down. So if people stop using the bus and get on their bikes and walk, and car use remains the same, statistics suggest we'll see an increase in the number of fatalities and serious injuries. We need a holistic approach involving promoting active mobility and keeping safety to the forefront, which is why in my current role as the coordinator for road safety and sustainable mobility, I really insist on keeping both of these issues on the table together.
Yeah, definitely.
So there you have, there's my three: health, congestion, safety.
And safety.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I hope you keep enjoying the night.
I will. Thank you very much indeed.